We've seen lots of heroes make their way from the pages of DC's comics to the big screen, being integrated in the DC extended universe. But just which characters are we still missing when it comes to their appearance, integration, and prominence in the DCEU? And why are we missing them? Welcome back, Nerd Squad. This is Top 10 Nerd, and I am your host, Amanda McKnight. Today we'll be counting down the top 10 superheroes too powerful for the DCEU. Let's find out who makes the cut and get into it. Number 10. Martian Manhunter. While we did get a glimpse at what Martian Manhunter could have looked and acted like in the DCEU through Zack Snyder's cut of the Justice League, we still haven't had Martian Manhunter properly introduced in the main continuity of the DCEU. Main continuity, I guess, for the cinematic universe. Unfortunately, while Zack Snyder's cut was his intended vision for the film that he was forced to leave due to a personal tragedy, it's not considered canon to the DCEU. Although this could be retconned later depending on what happens in the Flash movie. Who knows, the Snyderverse could become part of the DCEU again. Martian Manhunter getting the axe initially in the theatrical release of Justice League could have to do with the fact that he is super cosmic or a little more complicated than most heroes when it comes to his relationship with Earth, or it could have to do with the additional problem of his powers. Also, Martian Manhunter is kinda just complicated in general, but in a good way. Despite the fact that Martian Manhunter, like most other Martians, has a fear of fire, he is still insanely OP when it comes to his powers. Also, Martians might be afraid of fire, but it doesn't actually hurt them as severely as their fears would imply. It's a psychological thing. It's not like, yeah, and if you set me on fire, like, I die, just poof, I'm gone. That's not a thing that happens. They just get burned, like we would. John Johns possesses powers of telepathy, telekinesis, super strength, super speed, durability, shapeshifting, invisibility, self-duplication, biofusion, and X-ray vision, just to name a few. So yeah, I feel like that could be a big part of why we don't really have him as like a main part of the Justice League yet. Number 9. Bat-Mite. Although he's somewhat mischievous when it comes to Bat-Mite, he's still generally a force of good, or at least he tries to be. Bat-Mite is Batman's #1 fan, and he idolizes the hero. Like Superman's mischievous imp rival, pal, and sometimes enemy, Mr. Mxyzptlk, Bat-Mite is also capable of warping reality, or so it would seem. Later on, his backstory was further complicated when it was suggested that he was merely a hallucination of Batman, a character that represented the rational part of Batman's mind, and existed only in his imagination. It's still not known if Bat-Mite is a true character who exists outside of Batman, or simply a character who exists within Batman's psyche. Either way, he's a tough hero to include in the DCEU. Either because he's just crazy powerful, or because it just makes Batman look really crazy and he's like a tiny little, like almost cartoon Batman guy. And friends, before we move on to our next spot, if you are loving this list and you want more lists like this list where we talk about the DCEU, be sure to let us know by giving this video a thumbs up. Number 8. Swamp Thing. Swamp Thing may have gotten his own show very briefly as part of the short-lived DC Universe streaming service, which has since been merged with HBO Max and basically no longer exists, but that doesn't mean the hero will be coming to the DCEU anytime soon. Which is a shame too, as that series had amazing reviews, proving just how awesome the depiction of Swamp Thing can be on screen. Swamp Thing was once Alec Holland, a botanist who, after his lab was attacked, was set aflame while doused with his newly invented biorestorative formula. Alec and his wife Linda had created the formula together. When he ran into the swamp, he merged with it, becoming a new sort of life form, a living swamp thing, if you will, which had also merged with Alec's mind. Swamp Thing is an elemental created in part by the Green during its time of need. The Swamp Thing can connect with and control plant life, has super strength, is immortal, can resurrect, and can change size. There's a lot Swamp Thing can do. If I had a Swamp Thing ad where Swamp Thing was like helping you with plants, that's what it would be. Number 7. Zatanna. Zatanna is one of the greatest magic users that we have in the DC universe. She might be known for performing magic with phrases spoken backwards, but she's actually so accomplished that she actually doesn't even need to speak to cast all of her spells. Bit of a misnomer, although it is the thing we know her for. She can manipulate time, fly, or give the gift of flight to others, travel to other dimensions, heal, and much more. She has knowledge additionally of various different types of magic, including black magic and necromancy. I know we're supposed to be getting a film for Zatanna in the DCEU, like that's a thing that's going to happen, and that it will reportedly have its screenplay written by Emerald Fennell, the director of Promising Young Woman, but we still don't have the film yet, and there have been talks of Zatanna's DCEU film for a while now, so you know, we'll see what happens. I'm just saying, let's not put the cart before the horse. universe, you know what I mean? Despite how powerful she is though, I would definitely love to see Zatanna in action on the big screen. So I do hope the movie does happen. Not saying I don't want it to, I'm just saying, where is Zatanna? Why isn't she there yet? Is it because she's too powerful? Probably. Number 6. Green Lantern. Green Lantern is one of those characters that I'm still amazed we have not yet had in the DCEU. The Lanterns were teased in Zack Snyder's The Justice League, nicknamed the Snyder Cut, but we still have yet to really have them properly introduced in the DCEU or even included. It actually feels a bit strange to me that we have Shazam, but we have no Hal Jordan or Jon Stewart or Kyle Rayner or Guy Gardner. Like, what? This could be because Green Lantern is such a cosmic hero and so powerful that DC might be afraid any film they put the hero in simply would not work. Also, that's a lot of effects if you're going to space, and they have history with, you know, that hero on the big screen. He was initially played by Ryan Reynolds in a non-DCEU related Green Lantern film way back in 2011. Feels like forever ago now, when the MCU was just getting off the ground, and a few years prior to the start of the DCEU itself, with 2013's Man of Steel. Also, oh my goodness, if you go back and watch that movie, like, you can see how hard Ryan Reynolds is like trying to be Hal Jordan, and I'm just like, you know what? He actually wasn't a bad Hal Jordan. I don't know if that's a controversial opinion. Number 5. Damage. Damage is an anti-hero who is considered one of the strongest in the DC universe. The only catch is he can only transform into the unstoppable monster-like force, where he has powers such as super strength, durability, invulnerability, magic resistance, and a healing factor for 1 hour a day. However, during that 1 hour, he's pretty much indestructible and unstoppable. He even proved to be too much to handle for Wonder Woman, and later gave Superman and the Justice League a run for their money. However, he ultimately did end up being defeated by Deadman in the end, who showed up and possessed him for the remainder of his rampage hour, defeating him. Still, Damage is a pretty crazy powerful anti-hero that we likely won't see in the DCEU anytime soon, likely due in part to how destructive he is, I'm sure. Number 4. Orion. Orion is one of the strongest of the new gods and is also Darkseid and Tigra's son. But despite the fact that he is the son of Darkseid, it doesn't mean that he's inherently one of the biggest bads around. In fact, Orion is actually a hero, the exact opposite of his dad, but not the opposite when it comes to the power that he wields. He is also considered a new god, which means that he's insanely strong, durable, and pretty much inexhaustible in a fight. He is immortal and can easily take hits from Superman without really showing much sign of injury. Orion is also a gifted fighter and leader, and at one point even was able to lead an army in defeating the entire Green Lantern Corps, himself fending off Hal Jordan with one mighty punch. He's like, punch, I'm gonna choke you a bit, and then fight is done. Goodbye. Leaving. I'm rolling out in space. Number 3. Phantom Stranger. The Phantom Stranger is pretty all-powerful. Initially, we didn't even fully understand his true identity on New Earth, nor his powers, which weren't super clearly defined initially. What has been defined, however, is that the Phantom Stranger is extremely powerful, and thus far seems mainly limited by the fact that he's not really permitted to interfere in the shaping of the universe, meaning he can aid in fights against universal threats, but not directly affect the outcome with his powers, more providing guidance than getting directly involved. While back in the New Earth continuity there were many potential backstories for the Phantom Stranger, on Prime Earth we know that he was once the Judas who is famous for betraying Jesus in the Bible. His punishment following his death was that he would be unable to die, but instead would have to walk the earth for eternity, making him virtually immortal. He became the servant of a voice that spoke to him, and with each task completed, he got closer to his own redemption. Though it has been thousands of years and he still has not achieved his redemption yet. Number 2. The Spectre. If we're going to talk about the Living Tribunal on our MCU version of this list, you know we gotta talk about the Spectre on our DCEU version. The Spectre is an immensely powerful cosmic entity who is often thought of as a hero, but has definitely had some methods to fighting crime that could be considered morally questionable? Like when he turned a man into wood and then sawed him into pieces? That's a thing that happened. Or when there was a guy that was afraid of fire and he's like, I'm gonna turn you into a candle and like melt you. That was also a thing that happened. I wonder when he turned that guy into wood and then cut him into pieces, if you could count the number of rings inside of him to tell how old he was, like a tree. Because the Spectre can do things like warp reality, that just means that he wouldn't really fit into the DCEU very easily, as we'd need some massive threats in order to give him any kind of real struggle. He would just be like, I'm gonna turn that person into wood. Now you're a candle. Now you're paper. I'm gonna cut you with scissors. That's all handled. Done. Next. Number 1. Dr. Manhattan. Outside of the Watchmen film we had, which isn't currently considered as part of the DCEU canon, it's unlikely we'll ever see Dr. Manhattan on the big screen again. It's especially hard to have someone like Dr. Manhattan in the films because, well, he's pretty much always naked, which means we either need to dress him up somehow, put him into an R-rated only film, or have a lot of conveniently placed fruit baskets and props around in the foreground of each shot in order to censor him. Dr. Manhattan, though, when it comes to his power levels, is one of the people responsible for creating the New 52 continuity. That's just how powerful he is. So to have someone who is capable of rewriting the universe in that way within the DCEU seems like it would be a lot, unless, I suppose, if you're planning on completely resetting the DCEU continuity. Which DC superheroes do you think are too powerful to appear in the DCEU? What other pieces of work, television, or films do you think should be included in the DCEU canon? What upcoming DC films or shows are you most excited to watch, whether they are DCEU or outside of that? Let us know in the comments below. This has been Top 10 Nerd, and I'm your host Amanda McKnight saying thank you so much for watching, and till next time, stay nerdy, YouTube.